Okay.
Okay, Robert, part of protocol. I already have your name right here, but I always just ask just in case. May you please say your first and last name and spell it out along with the position title you would like to be addressed as.
Yes, Robert McCuiston, running for 3rd Congressional District of Nebraska.
Okay, awesome. Robert, right to the first question. Why do you believe that you're the better person for the job than Smith, and why do you believe that he needs to be replaced now?
Well, I don't believe in career politicians anymore because I'm all for term limits and exclusively age limits. My proposal would be discussed between colleagues as far as if I am successful in this bid to set the age at 74, 76, and all people, including former President Trump, excluded from this legislation because we're getting these people, how should I say it? We're getting these older folks running the country, and some of them can maybe be susceptible to Alzheimer's or any kind of mental diseases, So we need to scale back the age, of running for any political office. That includes local, state, and federal offices. Yeah.
Okay, and Robert, yep, and Robert, your thoughts on the state Republican Party backing many of the challengers instead of the incumbents? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, as far as I know the state of Nebraska, the establishment party. That's what we need to get away from because Governor Pillen endorsed Adrian Smith, and the Nebraska GOP pretty much stabbed me in the back because you know just as well as I know that in January of 23, I entered the race. I went to a few GOP meetings. I sat and I actually sat at the state fair booth because of the GOP. They had trouble finding people to man the GOP booth. I manned it about 8 different times. And it's kind of funny. They mentioned to me, I had some literature there, and then just kind of every once in a while, they was promoting the state legislature, the candidates for state legislature, but they very seldom mentioned me running for Congress. And I knew then that they probably wouldn't want to endorse me and things like that. So they endorsed another opponent, which is my opponent, for uh, the position to take over Adrian Smith. And when did he enter the race? It was December of 23. I went to county fairs. I went to multiple parades. I manned the state fair GOP booth, uh, the Kool-Aid days in Hastings. And then I also was at the Harvest of Harmony parade and met Mr. Governor Pillen early last year. He told me good luck. He didn't endorse me. I'm not saying that's an endorsement, but he told me good luck. And as far as me, Gary, being endorsed or accepting any donations, I don't worry about that at all. And the reason being, and you know just as well as I do, and all the smart people of Nebraska, because I support the common man and common woman. I am not a corporation lover. I am not a lover of the establishment because that's been going on way too long. There should be term limits. There should not be the term, and I don't know who came up with this term, career politician. That has to be thrown out the window. And like I said, I should say, I have nothing against my opponents. We live in a democracy, and we all do the best we can to represent the public. But when you talk about Adrian Smith, I have nothing against him, but he does not, I repeat, he does not represent the common man and woman here in the state of Nebraska. And when I'm talking about myself accepting donations or endorsements, I would rather not. You know why this is because if someone offers you an endorsement, if someone offers you a donation, you don't have to be very intelligent to understand, oh, now I'm going to owe them a favor. When I get into this office, if I'm successful, I get into this office, now I owe Mr. Joe, I owe him this for giving me a $100 donation. I owe this lady something for a endorsement and things like that. So that leaves me in the clear to represent the average Nebraskan. Yeah.
All righty.
I'm proud to do that. Yeah.
Yes, sir. And just switch gears just a little bit. So UNL, University of Columbia, a lot of universities and a lot of different other places, schools, it could be any other locations have had multiple protests being pro-Palestine. Now, what are your thoughts on that? And what do you think the U.S. needs to do with taking the next steps in regard to this?
The next step in that is law enforcement needs to uphold the law. And then likewise, on the college students' rights, they should have, by all means, the right to protest. But they do not have the right to actually break windows, break down doors, cause public destruction. They do not have the right to do that, but hold peaceful protests and things like that. Now, in regards to that, I do not believe that the U.S. should be funding Israel at all. Israel has already enough arms very similar to the United States, because I feel that a peaceful solution over in Israel and Palestine should be gained to end this conflict, because there are too many women and children just being slaughtered. I look at it in their shoes. I'm not on either side. I'm not against Jewish people. I'm not against that, with a common ground to actually end this conflict and say, come to our senses. And this is what I mean when I say with the U.S. politics. We've got political figures, Benjamin Netanyahu. We've got just these different figures. Putin. These people should not be in charge. Who should be in charge? It should be more level-headed people, younger people, to represent the larger of the population of those countries. Because that's what I mean by term limits in this country, as far as the Congress, the House, and the Senate. The president position has term limits, and that's because back in the 30s, FDR served a 4th term. And that's why we should have term limits on Congress, the House and the Senate. And we can negotiate that if I'm successful. We can negotiate that I don't know. We can come to a consensus of what the limit should be. 12 years, 16 years, whatever, something like that. But when you're getting in there where somebody's made a career out of 30 years, 35 years, 36 years, I would consider it kind of a dictatorship House and dictatorship Senate, because that's how people come into these positions ingrained. It's my way or the highway. It used to be, and I'm speaking Republican and Democrat. It's not all Republican. It's not all Democrat. It's not your decision. Let's come to a consensus, and it should be based upon what the population of that nation or the state of Nebraska should consider. A great decision. Mm-hmm.
Okay, and Robert, how much do you think the U.S. should aid in foreign wars or at all?
That's an extremely pertinent question for me, because I do believe in aiding any foreign nation. I don't think we should favor any particular nation like we do, such as Israel. I understand Israel's important. God loves everyone. God loves Palestinian people. God loves Jewish people. God loves all of us. That's why we go to church. But when you're talking foreign aid, that would have to be, in my view, it needs to be a loan that must be paid back. Just like when you or I go to a bank, the bank don't just say, oh, here's some money. Don't worry about paying us back. We are borrowing extreme amounts of money from the Federal Reserve System to give to other countries, and us taxpayers have to pay it back through our taxes. And like I said, I don't know if anybody knows a lot of their history, but Germany finished paying back the US and other nations for the war, what the war cost other nations to go to war with Germany, because Germany had to pay the money back because they were the losing nation. But that's what I agree on that. We are getting at the point where our federal deficit is just becoming out of control. And it's never been worse. Our nation has never been in a worse position than it is now over my lifetime. Yeah. So that's how I feel about that. It needs to be paid back. If you can't pay it back, maybe if they need money, they can get it from the International Monetary Fund. But that's another whole different issue, period. But like I said, as long as we can get the money back through payments, that's fine. Yeah. And we should not favor any particular nation.
Okay, and on to a question about Biden. How do you feel about the Biden EV mandate to just getting your opinions on that, as well as your thoughts on there not being a flex fuel mandate?
Well, I agree on the flex fuel mandate, but I don't think it should be necessarily a mandate. I should think it should be, voluntarily, if we want to say that. As far as Biden, the EV mandate, I have to smile because this gets back to electric vehicles. Electric vehicles in the United States are going to work in certain areas. Sparsely populated areas via rural areas, We should have a choice. Fossil fuel, gas-powered vehicles, diesel, that should be our choice to do that. Because you get in a blizzard or something like this, your towns are more further away, the proximity. This isn't going to work so well, these EV vehicles, you know. But like in a city, Chicago, New York, San Francisco, these EV vehicles would make sense. But you cannot change and force these things overnight. But I think we're headed in the right direction where we have a choice of fossil fuel vehicles or electric vehicles. But that should be left up to the public to determine when they need that and whether it's feasible in their particular situation.
Okay, and excuse me. And what are your thoughts on the Republican frontrunner for president not accepting the results of 2020?
Well, I do the election was kind of questionable. But what I'm saying is, do I believe there was some voter fraud? Yes, I do believe there was some voter fraud. But to the extent of whether it threw the election off by a mile, I question that. But I do believe there's a little voter fraud, but I don't think it would have thrown the election the other way. But I do, as a Republican, I do support Donald Trump.
Righty. And what is your stance on abortion? And do you think it should be state or federal in some sort?
Gary, I was talking that to another person that contacted me. Her name is Martha. I won't mention the last name. Out of the Omaha World Herald. She wanted me to give her my stance on that. It's a two-part stance. And it's not only about abortion. It's about gun control or / reform and abortion. How do we want it? How does the general public want it? My idea is we shouldn't even be talking about abortion. I am pro-life. I'm not pro-choice. But if I was a woman and I was pregnant and was thinking about giving up my human being child, I would have to look at the other side of the coin. Well, what about gun control? What about that? What do I mean? Well, when someone is advocating for gun control because a school shooting happened, but then again, that same woman is advocating for abortion rights, I don't understand what they're thinking. You know, it should be one way or the other. I don't agree on killing someone with a gun, but the gun is not killing that person. The person behind the gun is killing that person. See? And as far as your question about abortion, I'm pro-life. I would agree on an abortion in very slim certain instances where it may threat the woman's life. And the woman would need to get at least 3 different doctors' opinions to determine and get the same level of outcome and input from those doctors, which would be the same. And she could then make a reasonable decision. And you ask me who should control that. I think that should be left up to the states. And I think it should be illegal if a person resides in Nebraska / a woman, and she wants to get an abortion. So she goes across the state line to Kansas and gets an abortion. But she resides in Nebraska and she comes back to Nebraska to live. I think that should be illegal. But what I would say to her, well, if you anticipate maybe getting an abortion a year or any time in your life, you might want to go to Kansas and live in Kansas because they allow abortion there. You cannot live in Nebraska and just willy-nilly get an abortion. That's my view on that. But yeah, because I believe taking a child is taking a human life. It's that simple, you know. Okay.
Okay, and I have to ask you about this situation surrounding the Speaker of the House, Taylor Greene, looking to push out Mike Johnson. Not long after Kevin McCarthy was removed. What are your thoughts on that?
I kind of want to dress up in a clown suit and represent a clown and join the House of Representatives and say, look, I'm in the circus. Because that's exactly what it is. It's a circus. Marjorie Taylor Greene, if anybody should be ousted from anywhere, it should be her ousted from the House of Representatives. Because all she is a rebel rouser. I mean, where does this stop? Say we get rid of Mike. His name is Mike Johnson, right? Say we get rid of him. Well, the Republican Party could say, well, we have no one else. No one else would like to be the House of Representatives because of all this fanfare getting rid of these previous House of Representatives. Hakeem Jeffries is next, right? How would the Republicans like Hakeem Jeffries to be the Speaker of the House? Oh, then they say, oh, we made a mistake. We made a mistake. We shouldn't have did that. Marjorie Taylor Greene, what was you thinking? See, that's what I'm getting at. I mean, they should be more civilized to say, Speaker of the House Johnson, I think is kind of a moderate Republican, similar to my views. He's willing to work with both sides and say this is how it is. It can't be my way or the highway. Government doesn't work like it can't work like that because, in other words, it can't work for the people what it was designed for. Yeah.
All right, and on to this topic. So, in your opinion, how do we balance our trade partnership with China while also at the same time not really trusting their government?
It's amazing how you're asking me these questions I've been talking about these past few days. China. We all have to ask ourselves, is China friend or foe? And you're talking balancing. And the Republicans, well, all politicians, getting at helping the common man and common woman, the people that actually elect these representatives. We're talking about banning TikTok. Are you serious? This is an app for some adults, mainly children, maybe kids, teenagers. Some small businesses use the app and claim that it's a threat to our national security. Oh my God. It almost makes me cringe sometimes when these politicians should be talking how we can work with China. We don't need to have an enemy. None of us need to have an enemy. I understand war is money, but we don't need to have an adversary all the time. Because you walk into Walmart, you walk into any store, Costco, Sam's Club, you look at the item, made in China. I purchased this item, made in China. Either their friend or foe. I don't get it. In other words, I don't get people's thinking. As far as balancing, we're actually balancing right now. As far as sanctions, I think that's only hurting the consumer. Sanctioning goods coming from China. Because all the retailer at this end, on this side of the ocean, will actually tack that tariff that was imposed on them, or any kind of sanctions, tack that on that product that the consumer's buying. So I agree in working with people. I know the tension between the United States and China when it comes to Taiwan. How do I think as a candidate? I'm sorry to say it, but there will be a war. There will be a war between the United States, China, or Russia, or one of them, unless you get these leaders in those countries to understand there has to be a democracy, there has to be a change at the top. But I do not see that happening anytime soon. And the U.S. being a policeman for every nation in the world, I think that's wrong. I think we should focus on the United States and focus on the American people, what our U.S. government was set up for, and try and work with these foreign nations, foreign governments, and being civilized about it. You know, I understand those leaders in those other nations, they pretty well got their population bound down to where they have no rights at all. And now we're trying to do the same thing. U.S. government's trying to take our rights away from using an app called TikTok, just at the expense of us, to save the corporations in this country. We have Facebook, but Facebook, do they really want us using TikTok? Probably not. They'd rather have us on Facebook all the time rather than TikTok. There's some things behind the scene on that. Yeah. And our government works for corporations. The monopolization of corporations, ever since that was challenged back in the 30s, is just out of control. The acquisitions and mergers of corporations is just out of control. There's hardly any competition anymore, because the big boys have ate up the competition, bought them out, merged with them. There's little competition anymore when it comes to the marketplace. Yeah. So in that regards, the balance between trade And whether they're a foe or not, I think is already being done, because until things stop coming across the ocean from China, and that would be hurtful for China if the United States didn't buy those goods. But all that happens is China sells those goods cheap to retailers here, and then retailers mark those goods up to sell to the American people. And I think a lot of things should be made here in America again. So.
Okay, well, Robert, once again, thank you for your time. And final question I have for you: is there anything
Okay.
else you would like to mention or say that I have not asked you, or anything else about the campaign going on?
In regards to immigration, that's a big one. I think some of this money, whether you want to call it aid or money, given to some of these foreign countries, a lot of that could be allocated to finishing the border wall. And not to get in it too much of how the Democrats are blaming the Republicans for that immigration bill, or I should say slash reform, that they failed to pass a few months ago. All of the politicians, the current incumbents that are in power, are pretty much lying about it, because how did most of our ancestors come over to this country? They came over to this country through Ellis Island. They didn't come over across the ocean from and then get to Ellis Island and say, oh yeah, come on in, you can come on in. No, they had to be vetted. They went through the process of becoming a legal citizen, and a legal, not illegal, a legal citizen, not illegal. As far as the border being open, that's twofold. The population demographics across the world are going down. In other words, what I mean by that, men and women aren't getting married like they used to. Families, husband and wife couple, are not having children like they used to. So the population is decreasing, and employers, corporations, are pleading to the government. We can't find workers. We can't find help. Part of that problem is being solved by letting that southern border be open for this long. Because I experience it firsthand of where I work. Some people have been hired. Some people have been fired because they did not have the proper paperwork to work at that employment opportunity. So that's why the border's still open. It isn't just the Democrats, it's also the Republicans, because employers are pleading to the government. We need employees. They're saying people are lazy. They're saying young people are lazy. They don't want to work. Well, part of that was caused by the COVID crisis, when they made everybody stay home. People said, hey, I like this. Government's giving me money. I don't have to go to work. Oh, yeah, this is all it. So some of them people, and early retirement of elderly people, maybe in their 50s, said, hey, I'm not going back to work. So, but anyway, that's all I got to say about immigration. I think we need to use enforcement. I think we need to use the National Guard to enforce those laws and vet people properly to come into this country. I welcome immigrants when they go through the proper channels. So that's what America is, a melting pot, I guess.
All righty. Well, Thank you, Robert, for your time. I appreciate it. Thank you for doing the interview, and yeah, good. Best of luck to you.
And thank you. And have a good afternoon, Gary.
Yes, sir. You
Thank
too.
you. Yep.
Absolutely.